It was a fight that I was relentless. I wouldn't back down. It was the last fight.
Tonight, a BC mother who lost her son to an opioid overdose is fighting to make a change.
We waited 154 years to correct this history, and this is just the beginning of change.
The first Louis Riel Day after being recognized as Manitoba's first premier.
This is the way that I can have her close to me now that she's no longer with us on this side.
And a group of ribbon skirt makers showcase their talents and the meanings behind their dresses. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. We begin tonight with another young life lost in Manitoba. A 26-year-old woman has been charged with second-degree murder in the death of a 1-year-old boy on the Wasagamack First Nation in northern Manitoba. RCMPs say they found the boy dead while responding to a call Saturday morning. This follows a series of child deaths in Manitoba over the span of 2 weeks. On February 2nd, 2 Winnipeg parents were charged with manslaughter after their 1-year-old daughter died of fentanyl intoxication. Days later, another Winnipeg woman was charged with manslaughter after a 2-month-old died of malnutrition. And last week, a man was charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths of his common-law partner, her niece, and their 3 children. For more on these recent deaths, we're joined by Sherry Gott. She is Manitoba's advocate for children and youth. Sherry, thanks so much for taking the time for us here today. As we mentioned, Winnipeg Police and the Manitoba RCMP have announced 6 children and youth have been the victims of homicide, many of them just babies. So what are your thoughts on these tragedies?
Well, it is very tragic. Anytime a child dies in Manitoba, it is, there needs to be an appropriate response from all levels of government.
Some of these deaths will be reviewed by your office, right? What would that entail?
Anytime a child dies in Manitoba, we do get a notice from the Chief Medical Examiner's office, and that we start the review process on whether or not child death meets our legislative mandate, and we start that assessment immediately.
Now, this can be a difficult time for other children and youth who are seeing these stories on TV or online. Has your office been fielding more calls, and what type of support is there out there?
Well, as you know, there are, many help support lines in Manitoba that people can reach out to if they are distressed by the number of child deaths recently. And I think it's important that they use those lines to contact support in Manitoba. Even in communities, there is, your local public health office that has resources to help and support anybody that's distressed.
How can your office or others support the families or communities where these deaths have occurred?
They certainly can call our office here in Winnipeg, and we can ensure that we provide appropriate resources and supports and listen. We are here to support any child and youth that is distressed about these concerning deaths.
Now, of course, Sherry, these are all different circumstances, but are there things out there that we could be doing to prevent similar incidents like this?
Yes, I have been in January 2024, at the beginning of this year, we released our compliance report, and we asked government to look at it and to ensure that the appropriate supports and services are provided to children and youth in Manitoba. So I think that, the lack of inaction creates a system that is not responding appropriately to the tragedies that we recently were exposed to or heard about.
What would you like to see done?
Well, I've been asking to ensure that the government implements appropriate resources in communities throughout Manitoba so we can address any concerns any child and youth has in the areas of mental health and their needs.
Sherry, we'll leave it there, but appreciate you taking some time to talk with us about such a difficult matter.
Yes, thank you for inviting me.
Meanwhile, a vigil was held Friday night to remember the 5 family members who were killed in and around the town of Carman, Manitoba, the weekend before. More than 100 people grieved openly Friday night. Candles, flowers, and a mountain of stuffed animals were left in front of the house where the victims lived. 6-year-old Bethany, 4-year-old Javen, and 2.5-month-old Isabella are among the dead, along with their mother, 30-year-old Amanda Clearwater, and 17-year-old family friend and niece, Maya Grattan. Clearwater's common law partner, Ryan Manokisik, has been charged with 5 counts of first-degree murder in their deaths. The charges have not yet been tested in court. Still in Manitoba, a fatal house fire took place early Sunday morning in God's Lake Narrows First Nation, a small fly-in community about 5.5 hours northeast of Winnipeg. Local RCMP responded to a report of a fire at approximately 3 a.m. They found a 34-year-old female resident who was pulled from the fire by community members. She was taken to the local nursing station where she later died. Manitoba's office of the Fire Commissioner is looking into the cause of the fire. This wasn't the only recent fire in the community, with fires destroying a former band office in October last year and another one destroying a church in September before that. Time for a quick break. Still to come, part 1 in a series on the toxic drug crisis in British Columbia.
I wouldn't back down. It was the last fight I had for my kid, for my baby. We both deserved so much more respect in that moment.
Welcome back. BC is reporting its highest death rate from the toxic drug crisis in that province, with over 2,500 deaths in 2023, according to the BC Coroner Services. APTN's Tina House tells us the story of one grieving mother who lost her son to the epidemic and how she's fighting to make positive changes.
Well, Mike, Lenny, man, my life has never been the same, and I miss you with every breath I take, and every day that passes, I'm one day closer to you, and you're one day further away from me in this paradigm that I'm living in. Just not wanting to be here without you has been really difficult. But I'm trying my best to heal in the healthiest manner possible to make you proud. And I want you to know that your death was not in vain.
On June the 22nd, 2019, 29-year-old Glenn Rebick went out to meet some friends in downtown Vancouver and never returned home. What was supposed to be a fun night turned tragic when Glenn bought what he thought was cocaine, but in fact, it was laced with a lethal batch of fentanyl. He died using a loan. Meredith Dan is his mother. Today she came to the beach to honor her late son and to remember who he was.
I hope you're peaceful, baby. Shredding in the clouds with your best friend, Mikey.
Rebick was a well-known skateboarder in the Vancouver scene and was well on his way of making a career out of it before he passed away. Glenn was Meredith's only child, and she recalls the moment police showed up 4 days after his disappearance and how she was delivered the next of kin notification.
About 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my sister and my niece were with me, and we looked outside and there was a police car sitting outside for a long time. And I didn't know if it was for me or if it wasn't. And then sure enough, I got a knock on the door. And when I opened the door, Sergeant Buckman, Frederick Buckman, came into my home. She went straight into the living room. She put her hands on her hips. And without anything to say, Miss Dan, you should sit down. Miss Dan, we have some bad news. She walked in and said, well, first of all, Glenn is dead. And at that moment, I went down on my knees, and my niece caught me. And then I yelled at her right then and there and told her she needed to work on her delivery.
Dan filed a complaint with the BC Police Complaints Commission about the officer's conduct.
To me, that was unacceptable. I didn't feel as though that was a very professional, compassionate, or understanding way of delivering the news. And it only took her 14 minutes from the time she left her car to come in and give me the news and go back to her car. And in her report, she stated that my apartment was really small and she felt uncomfortable in the moment. Not that I was uncomfortable receiving the most devastating news that my only child had passed away. The VPD didn't find anything in wrongdoing on her behalf. They said that it was professional, and I decided to appeal that decision.
Dan appealed to the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, who, after an investigation, found that the officer abused her authority and lacked compassion when dealing with her. The officer, Constable Frederick Buckman, appealed to the BC Supreme Court, but after 4.5 years, the appeal was dismissed. Buckman has been ordered to take retraining courses with a focus on humanity and humility when working with Indigenous people. However, the judgment only affects this one complaint and will not affect any change to the Vancouver Police Department's policies.
It was a fight that I was relentless. I wouldn't back down. It was the last fight I had for my kid, for my baby. We both deserved so much more respect in that moment. And I was not going to back down. And I don't think that had I been a Caucasian male in the West End, she would have treated me with such lack of respect as she did as an Aboriginal mother who lives in East Vancouver.
But for Meredith, this is a small victory, but it won't bring back her son.
Every time, with every update, with everything that's gone through in the 4.5 years with this battle, I keep getting brought back in a time warp, back to the moment that I found out, first of all, Glenn is dead. And it's taken that time. It's taken so much time for me to try to heal, because getting pulled back to that moment, I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. But now that this is over, I'm hoping after 4.5 years, I'll be able to start moving forward the way that Glenn would want and expect me to, instead of just being sad all the time.
This countdown clock has been running on her phone since Glenn died. It's a constant reminder of that terrible day her life was torn apart.
This opioid crisis, the severity of that fentanyl that it has and how strong it is and how it's killing so many people really needs to be addressed and understood, that it could happen to anyone.
And the clock is ticking as officials are still scrambling to find solutions to this crisis. In 2016, an opioid epidemic was declared in Canada. Since then, it has taken the lives of over 38,000 people nationwide and counting. In part 2 of this story, we take a closer look at what's being done to prevent more senseless deaths. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Thanks, Tina, and we will have part 2 right here tomorrow night on the news. So many have been affected by this crisis. If you want to reach out with your story or about anything else, here's how to continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read or watch our stories, go to aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Time for one last quick break. Coming up, a look at the story behind these ribbon skirts.
It's not just sitting down at a sewing machine and just starting to sew. The thoughts and the ideas that are put into these skirts well in advance of even touching the sewing machine are really important.
Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. An overcast day helps create this amazing shoreline reflection along the Matagami River, located right through the center of Ontario. Beautiful one. Thanks to Lucas Martin for today's submission. Remember, you can submit a photo to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, sunny and -1 in Fredericton, sun's out and 3 below in Halifax, -19 in Kuujjuaq, 16 below for Nain. 2 above in Montreal, snow and 4 in Val-d'Or. Cloudy and +5 for Sault Ste. Marie, 4 above in North Bay. +2 in Thunder Bay, -4 with snow in Sioux Lookout. -9 in God's Lake, 10 below for Norway House. -9 in Barons River, 1 below in Winnipeg. -2 for Regina and Saskatoon. +1 in Meadow Lake, 0 for Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, -4 and sunny and high level, +3 under the sun in Fort McMurray. Sunny and 5 in Edmonton, +2 for Lethbridge. 10 in Vancouver and Kamloops. 0 and cloudy in Prince George, +1 with snow for Smithers. -12 in Old Crow, 1 above in Whitehorse. -13 for Yellowknife and Norman Wells. -29 in Sax Harbor, 24 below in Polituck. -37 for Chesterfield, -36 in Whale Cove. -31 for Resolute, 25 below in Igloolik. A group of 24 Métis artists have come together to showcase their journey of connecting with their ancestry through the creation of ribbon skirts and shirts. Our video journalist Rachel May shares the stories told through each piece.
It's not just sitting down at a sewing machine and just starting to sew. The thoughts and the ideas that are put into these skirts well in advance of even touching the sewing machine are really important.
That's Amy Briley of the Gabriel Dumont Institute in Saskatoon. She's one of the artists in the We Wear Them With Pride exhibit at the Saskatchewan Craft Council. There are 24 skirts and 3 shirts by Métis artists in the exhibit. Briley's skirt has special meaning for her. It's not just a celebration of culture, but a connection to her cousin.
It's called Megan's skirt. It represents my cousin, Megan Gallagher, who went missing and then was subsequently murdered. This is a way that I can have her close to me now that she's no longer with us on this side.
Briley says she wears the skirt when doing anything related to Megan, such as awareness walks, trials, or if she just wants to feel close to her cousin. Steph Canning of the Saskatchewan Craft Council says that collaborations with the Gabriel Dumont Institute always brings beauty to the gallery floor.
We were really excited to work with them again to bring this ribbon skirt exhibition to life here in our gallery.
This free exhibit is open now until March 9th at the Saskatchewan Craft Council in Saskatoon. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Beautiful work with a powerful story there. A portrait of Louis Riel at the Manitoba Legislature now officially recognizes him as the province's first premier. An updated plaque was shown off at a ceremony on Monday morning. The changes come after a new law passed last year declaring Riel Manitoba's first head of government. And an event also took place at his gravesite where a copy of the Louis Riel Act was presented. Here's CTV's Jeff Keel with more.
On the day named after him with ceremony, Louis Riel was recognized as Manitoba's first head of government.
We waited 154 years to correct this history, and this is just the beginning of change.
This portrait has been on the wall in the legislature for years, but after a new law passed last year declaring Riel the first premier, a plaque has been changed to reflect that status.
I think it reminds us so much of ourselves for Métis, our struggle to achieve a rightful place in Manitoba, a rightful place in Confederation, and a rightful place for our leader.
That law, the first one introduced by Premier Wab Kinew after winning the election, also has a clause to include Riel's accomplishments in the school curriculum.
I think the next step for us is going to be to reach out to educators and ask what additional resources and supports do they need.
The move recognized that in 1869, Riel led a provisional government in the Red River settlement. He adopted a list of rights for people of different cultures and languages. Riel fought for those rights to be enshrined in government as Manitoba was brought into Confederation. After the Northwest Rebellion of 1885 in what is now Saskatchewan, Riel was convicted of treason and hanged.
So even in Regina, we feel his impact.
Danny Lavallee is from Regina, visiting Winnipeg on Louis Riel Day. Lavallee stopped by Riel's statue near the legislature.
It's important for us to reflect and recognize important days for Métis people, so I thought today would be the perfect day to come and see the big man himself.
There was one more official ceremony which drew a large crowd. A copy of the act recognizing Riel as the first premier was presented at his gravesite.
The story of Manitoba is not over. We are still writing that story today.
Lots going on for Louis Riel Day. Well, Métis skip Carrie Anderson and Team Canada are vying for a record-breaking 5th straight Canadian Women's Curling Championship this week. Tonight on Face to Face, we'll be revisiting our episode with Carrie at the Gimli Curling Club when she was fresh off winning her 4th Scotties Tournament of Hearts and right before heading off to the Worlds. Here's some of Carrie and I hitting the ice for a one-on-one curling match. I'm just gonna come in behind you there. Come on, girl.
Very nice. Ooh,
Good
look at
sweep,
you.
wow. Okay, game over. We'll have to watch the episode to see fun times. Carrie and Team Anderson just wrapped up their game today with a convincing win over Team Saskatchewan. Team Canada now improved to 5-1 at the Scotties Tournament of Hearts. The finals go on Sunday. All the best of them as they've already faced some adversity and controversy this week. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For news anytime, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward, Marcy McGuitch. Thanks for being with us. Stick around, Face to Face is next. Have a great night.